Welcome to Trending Update USA, and I am Steffan, bringing you another deep dive, fast-moving, fully loaded tournament preview as the countdown to the United Cup begins. Fans across the world are buzzing, countries are gearing up, and some of the biggest names in tennis, Iga Swiatek, Coco Gauff, Emma Raducanu, Angella Mboko, Alexander Zverev, and Jack Draper, are preparing for an event that always delivers drama, rivalries, and unpredictable showdowns. Today, we are looking closely at who these stars could realistically face at the 2026 United Cup based on the current competitive landscape, national team formations, ranking trajectories, and the rivalries that have shaped their seasons. This is the kind of deep sport storytelling that blends anticipation with analysis, the energy of the New Year tennis kickoff with the firepower of the sport's brightest talents. And in this year's build-up, the matchup projections are creating just as much excitement as the tournament itself. As the calendar edges closer to day one of the United Cup, team strategy becomes a decisive factor. Nations must choose their top female and male representatives, and for teams like Poland, USA, Great Britain, Germany, and Kenya, this selection could shape the matchups of our featured players. Let's begin with world number 1 Iga Swiatek, arguably the most consistent competitor in women's tennis. For 2 seasons straight, Swiatek has carried Poland's United Cup campaign on her shoulders, delivering dominant singles performances and clutch mixed doubles moments. This year, her potential opponents look more varied than ever. If Poland is placed in a group with France, it is very possible we could see Swiatek face Caroline Garcia or Clara Burel, 2 players who bring heavy ball striking and unpredictable shot-making. Garcia in particular has a history of taking the racket out of her opponent's hands when she's on, though consistency remains her challenge. If Poland instead draws Spain, then a Swiatek vs Paula Badosa matchup becomes likely, a battle between 2 baseline-heavy, high-intensity players who know each other's patterns well. And if Poland is grouped with Kazakhstan, Iga could face Elena Rybakina, her toughest stylistic rival. Those matches have delivered everything: tension, momentum swings, long rallies, and a gripping contrast of Swiatek's elasticity versus Rybakina's laser-like power. But perhaps the most emotionally charged matchup, one that fans constantly fantasize about, would be a clash between Poland and the USA, setting the stage for Swiatek versus Coco Gauff. Their rivalry is one of the fastest-growing storylines in the sport. Gauff has closed the gap, especially on faster courts, and the improvement in her serve and forehand has changed the tone of their encounters. A United Cup showdown between these two would make headlines globally and likely become one of the defining matches of the event. It would also set the stage for what could be an equally intense mixed doubles contest involving Swiatek and Hurkacz against Gauff and Fritz, a matchup loaded with tactical intrigue and name value. Speaking of the USA, Coco Gauff's potential opponents go beyond just Swiatek. If Team USA gets grouped with Italy, Gauff could face Jasmine Paolini, a player who has become one of the tour's most disciplined fighters. Paolini's foot speed and counterpunching could push Gauff into long, strategic rallies, and given Paolini's rise over the past 2 seasons, this match could be far closer than previous editions. If the USA draws Australia, then a Gauff vs Angela Tomljanovic encounter becomes possible, a matchup that historically leans toward Gauff, but Tomljanovic's experience, her flat ball striking, and home crowd energy can turn any match into a battle. A match against Great Britain could line her up against Katie Boulter, whose growing confidence, aggressive return game, and rise into the top 20 have made her one of the most dangerous unseeded threats on the tour. But the matchup that could produce fireworks would be Gauff vs Raducanu, a clash of 2 global icons with contrasting playing styles. Raducanu's clean, early-timed ball striking against Gauff's athleticism and defensive creativity is the kind of dynamic that fills stadiums and dominates sports headlines. Emma Raducanu's potential path at the United Cup is equally compelling. Representing Great Britain, she could face elite names depending on her group. If GB is paired with Spain, she could face Badosa or Sara Sorbi's Tormo, 2 completely different types of challenge. Badosa would test her power against Emma's timing, while Sorbi's Tormo would force super long exchanges and make her work for every point. A showdown with Poland could bring the blockbuster Raducanu vs Swiatek matchup, one that fans have been waiting for since Raducanu won the US Open. Raducanu tends to play her best tennis in team events and under pressure, and her ability to take the ball early could trouble Swiatek if she finds her rhythm. Meanwhile, a clash against the USA might set up the Gauff-Raducanu match that always produces global buzz. It's a rivalry fueled not just by tennis ability, but by their intertwined narratives as young stars who have carried immense expectations. Raducanu could also encounter Canada, which would likely mean facing Bianca Andreescu, a meeting between two players who know how to play elite, fearless tennis when healthy. That kind of matchup would be filled with unpredictability, creativity, and tactical adjustments. One of the most exciting rising stars in the sport, Angella Mboko, representing Kenya, enters the United Cup picture as one of the most fascinating wild cards. Mboko's athletic explosiveness, her raw but rapidly weaponizing game style, and her ability to hit through even top defenders could produce some surprisingly tight matches. If Kenya draws teams like Greece, Mboko could face Maria Sakkari, an opponent who would push her physically and tactically. Against Czech Republic, Mboko could face Marketa Vondrousova or Karolina Muchova if the latter returns from injury. Either matchup would test Mboko's consistency, movement, and shot selection. If Kenya lands in a group with Japan, a match against Naomi Osaka becomes possible, a dream scenario for many fans who want to see the power versus power dynamic on full display. And if Kenya draws the USA or Poland, Mboko could face Gauff or Swiatek, the kind of high-profile showdowns that could significantly boost her global recognition. Mboko is young, fearless, and eager to test herself, and the United Cup is the ideal platform for that next big step. On the men's side, Germany's Alexander Zverev remains a major presence at the United Cup. His potential opponents depend heavily on group placement. Against the USA, he could face Taylor Fritz, a rivalry filled with tiebreaks, big serving, and baseline heat. If Germany draws Poland, then Zverev versus Hubert Hurkacz becomes likely, a battle between two players who deliver some of the best serving metrics on tour. Their matches often become serving clinics with very few break chances. If Germany lands in a group with Canada, Zverev could face Felix Auger-Aliassime, another big hitter who pushes Zverev into deep backhand exchanges. And if Germany clashes with Italy, a Zverev vs Jannik Sinner match becomes possible, one of the most high-quality matchups in men's tennis today. The speed, the ball striking, the shot tolerance, Sinner and Zverev always bring the best out of each other in long, attritional battles. Jack Draper, representing Great Britain, enters the United Cup as one of the most dangerous left-handers on tour. He is powerful, athletic, and finally arriving at consistency. If Great Britain is paired with Australia, Draper could face Alex de Minaur, a matchup built on contrast, Draper's pace and weight of shot against de Minaur's court coverage and relentless defense. If GB is placed with Poland, a Draper vs Hurkacz match becomes likely, a back-and-forth duel between two tall, heavy-serving opponents. Against Germany, he could face Zverev, a matchup that tests Draper's endurance and rally tolerance. Meanwhile, a potential Draper vs Matteo Berrettini matchup could occur if Great Britain draws Italy, though Berrettini's availability varies. And a Draper vs Sinner match would be another blockbuster pairing. Two young stars with massive ball striking engaging in a physical, bruising baseline battle. Draper could also clash with France, which would likely mean a match against Arthur Fils or Adrian Mannarino. Fils versus Draper in particular would be a thrilling contest between two explosive, rising talents. The mixed doubles scenarios create even more excitement. Imagine Swiatek and Hurkacz taking on Gauff and Fritz. Or Raducanu and Draper facing off against Zverev and Jules Niemeyer. Or Mboko pairing with Kenya's rising men's prospect against a seasoned European duo. These are the kinds of matchups the United Cup thrives on, cross-tour partnerships that deliver tactical depth and emotional intensity. As we dive deeper into the analytics of possible matchups, the strengths and weaknesses become clearer. Swiatek thrives in conditions that allow her to load her forehand and open the court. Against power players like Rybakina or Garcia, she will be forced to redirect pace and rely on her movement. Against consistency machines like Bolter or Sotheby's, she must stay patient and avoid trying to rush points. For Gauff, the biggest key will be her serve. When her serve holds up, she controls the rallies and sets the tone. Against players with strong returning abilities such as Paolini or Raducanu, this becomes even more critical. Meanwhile, Raducanu's success depends heavily on her ability to stay healthy and maintain explosive movement. When she is physically confident, her early timing on both wings can trouble even the very best. Mboko's situation is different. Her upside is enormous, but she must manage nerves and minimize unforced errors. The United Cup setting, loud crowds, mixed doubles pressure, national pride, can either elevate or overwhelm young players. But Mboko has shown repeatedly that she thrives in new challenges. On the men's side, Zverev's serve is his foundation. If that shot fires reliably, he becomes incredibly difficult to break. Draper's left-handed angles, however, could neutralize Zverev's patterns and force uncomfortable rally positions. Against a menor, Draper would need to stay disciplined and avoid rushing points. Against Hurkacz, it could turn into a marathon of holding serve and waiting for rare break opportunities. The United Cup is unique because these matchups do not settle into predictable routines. Upsets are common. Crowd energy shifts momentum. Players rise for the flag. The possibility of a young star like Mboko upsetting a top-tier player creates additional pressure. The opportunity for Raducanu to make a statement after injury-filled seasons adds narrative weight. The potential for a Gauff-Swiatek rematch brings in millions of global viewers. Every player arrives motivated, every nation arrives prepared, and every match, even on day one, feels like a moment that could shape a season. As we close in on the start of the United Cup, anticipation has reached its peak. Swiatek is preparing to defend her status as the sport's most reliable competitor. Gauff arrives carrying Grand Slam dreams and the confidence of a champion. Raducanu steps into the tournament looking to reclaim momentum and remind the world of her precision-driven, elite-level tennis. Mboko steps onto the global stage ready to surprise. Zverev returns seeking redemption after a season of mixed highs and lows. And Draper, armed with consistency and power, is ready to disrupt the established order. In the end, the United Cup gives us more than just tennis, it gives us storylines. It gives us the thrill of national pride, the electricity of mixed doubles, the rivalry energy between nations, the unpredictability of group stages, and the raw emotion that comes with wearing the flag. Every match becomes a test of character. Every point becomes a statement. And when the tournament finally kicks off, the potential matchups between Swiatek, Gauff, Raducanu, Mboko, Zverev, and Draper will be the defining spectacle that tennis fans around the world are waiting for. This is Trending Update USA. I am Steffan, and this has been your full 3,000-word deep dive into the matchups that could shape the 2026 United Cup.